Hey, welcome in, everybody. Come on in, grab a beverage, gather around. Let's talk some Michigan State sports. My name is Jim Comparoni, publisher, SpartanMag.com. I need Rob South or somebody to give me a thumbs up on audio. Publisher, SpartanMag.com. It is the Rivals.com website covering Michigan State. Every Monday night, usually Monday night, we gather around, talk about Michigan State sports here at the SpartanMag.com YouTube channel. Today it's a Tuesday. Had a lot of thanks JJ Huddle 79 for the sounding good notification there. Appreciate that. Usually we talk on Monday nights, but had a lot of things going on Monday. Postponed it a little bit to Tuesday this week. We'll talk about the Josh Langford news. We will talk about Michigan State getting ready to take on the Nittany Lions of Penn State. Talk about and we'll take your questions as we do every week here on the YouTube channel, SpartanMag.com. Also, we post an invitation to SpartanMag.com subscribers at the Underground Bunker message board and the Final Forum message board. Those are premium areas for SpartanMag.com members. We invite them to ask questions here. It's basically a live mailbag chat, and we will field those questions. I'm running a little bit late today. I apologize about that. Just got back not long ago from interviews over at the Duffy Doherty building. Michigan State getting ready to take on the Nittany Lions. Joe Bocci was there. Brian Lewerke was there. Josiah Scott getting ready to play Penn State. Huge game this weekend. A lot of people giving up on the Michigan State season. Some people are. The Michigan State players are not. We'll talk about that game as we move along. Appreciate everybody joining in again at SpartanMag.com and here at the YouTube channel. And we'll kick it off with a football question right now from Tom N. from Oldsmar, Florida. And he says, yes, the city is named after R.E. Olds, who donated the land for the city. So a little bit of trivia there. Some Florida land ownership trivia coming from Tom N. out of Oldsmar, Florida. R.E. Olds, Lansing guy. Ransom E. Olds, good one. Good guy. By the way, you might remember, I got some trivia for you. Boy, you guys hate it when I go off topic a little bit. But R.E. Olds, of course, that's who REO Speedwagon named their band after. REO Speedwagon came out of Champaign, Urbana, played in East Lansing a lot, played in the college bar circuit, and an original member of REO Speedwagon, none other than Duke Tomato. If you guys went to Rick's American Cafe in the 90s, you remember Duke Tomato. He was in REO Speedwagon to begin with. Not sure what happened there. Sounds like a tough break for Duke. But Duke was good. We appreciated him. We appreciate Tom Ann from Oldsmar, Florida. He says, do all of these players entering the transfer portal for Michigan State actually help recruiting by opening spots that would not have been open in the past due to the program's philosophy to not show players the door? Yeah, and we've talked about that over there at the Underground Bunker. It's been, and some people think that it's been a weakness for Michigan State, an oversight for Michigan State, that they have not pushed players out. And we've talked about that here on the Mailbag Spartan Live podcast in the past. And Michigan State has not pushed players out. Now the transfer portal players are leaving. It's just coming at a different time of year. People have posted on the bunker mentioning that Penn State had, I think, 18 players in the portal last year. But they get nudged out, and that might happen anytime between January into August. Michigan State, it's happening September and October. So will Michigan State always, I think the bigger question might be, is Michigan State always going to be in this calendar in which players leave at mid-season, which is not ideal? I mean, you'd rather guys be moving out earlier so that you're not relying on someone to be a second-string tailback and a third-string tailback, and they leave. Not an ideal situation, and but I don't know if D'Antonio is going to be more proactive about pushing players out. He's never wanted to do that. He wanted these players to stay, and he's not real happy that they left. Today at the press conference, Mark D'Antonio was asked about it a couple of times, and at least 3 or 4 times he said that he's going to take the high road in talking about this. He's not going to, well, he just said he's going to take the high road, and you probably know what that means. He's not going to criticize the players for leaving, but you can tell he's a little bit bothered by it. Kind of like the way he was bothered when Justin Lane left prior to the Red Box Bowl last year. A decision that I completely understand. D'Antonio didn't seem to understand. He didn't like to see a player cut out on his teammates prior to a bowl game. Now he's seeing players cut out on his team prior to the midway point of the season. So D'Antonio, if he had a hard time understanding Justin Lane, you can bet he's having a hard time understanding why these players would leave and leave their teammates in a lurch. Now, some of those players, Cam Chambers, Weston Bridges, were not playing and were not going to play. And it's my understanding that at least one of those players was not really going to have a scholarship coming back next year. Maybe that was Chambers, I'm not sure. They love Chambers as a kid. They support him academically, but as a lot of people expected, he had trouble balancing law school and what he needed to know as a football player as part of the playing group. Now, interestingly, so yeah, and D'Antonio said today that he's going to take the high road, wish those players well, but he said, quite honestly, it gives us a chance to get better, meaning the scholarship slots. So instead of having room for maybe 17 or 18, if everyone had stayed, and that's the way it was in the old days, 2013, 14, 15, 2011, 2012, players rarely left D'Antonio's program. They loved the family atmosphere, and they were building something. They were building toward winning. Well, this team could still build toward winning. Depending on what happens this week, pivotal weekend for Michigan State football, a lot of things are still possible in terms of racking up wins, but in the meantime, losses are being accumulated. So players are leaving now, but if they had stayed as they were in years past, if there were no portal, maybe they would leave later, maybe they would stick it out, I don't know, but maybe Michigan State would only end up with the usual 17 or 18 members of a recruiting class. And that's not ideal for building a program, because when you have a 20-player class like in 2016, that year they could have signed 28. They were recruiting really well. The class ended up being garbage, but they had a lot of recruiting power, is what I'm trying to say. That year, if they could have brought in 28 and then lost the number of the players that they did, they wouldn't be down to 6 right now. When you have a 17-man class after a 17-man class after a 17-man class, that's great as long as you don't hit one of those years with 50% attrition or 60% attrition, or like we are seeing with the 2016 class, 75% attrition. You can handle that if you've got big numbers. So might not be a bad thing for the team long term, kind of joining the human race in that regard in terms of pushing players out, but instead of pushing them, they are going out organically via the new transfer portal. So does it have a chance to, the question from Tom N is, does the transfer portal actually help recruiting? I think it does. I think it will help recruiting for the future. Let me get something set up here, a little housekeeping. Apologize about that. I need to click a couple of things here in order to get a look at some of the questions. Rob South, yeah, a lot of news today, no question about that. Old Tuck, appreciate the SpartanMag in orange from Old Tuck there. Representative, appreciate that from Austin, Texas. It says, live trivia, who had the shortest MSU football career? Luis Fonseca was short. There was a guy named, was it Brian Steffen from the Upper Peninsula or maybe Northern Lower Michigan? Saban's second recruiting class. The guy left. I think it wasn't Brian Steffen. Who was it? It was a guy from maybe Traverse City or maybe the UP. I'm sorry, Brian Steffen, if it wasn't you, but I should look it up. Anyway, a guy lasted 1 week. And back then at Spartan Magazine, we would have a feature. We'd call up the coaches during the summer, talk about the incoming freshmen. And the coach for that guy in Traverse City flat out told me, I can't remember what his exact words were, but it was one of only 1 or 2 times in which a high school coach did not have great things to say about the player and didn't predict much for the player. He predicted not so good things. Can't remember his exact words. Anyway, Brian Simon was his name from up north. And the high school coach really didn't have anything good to say. He didn't say anything bad, but he was like, I think, he was like, oh, I don't know if he's ready. I don't know if he really wants, I don't know how long he's going to last. I don't know if he's cut out for that. Words like that. Sure as you know what, Brian Simon lasted about a week. And looking back at it, as much of a control freak as Nick Saban is, how he recruited a player whose varsity high school coach didn't really go to bat for him, just un-Saban-like, and that player did not pan out. I'm going to also, if you can hang with me for a second, I'm going to post something. I'm probably going to tweet something out here just to let people know that we're live here at the chat. And before I do that, we'll take one more question from Los Angeles. The guy's name is a guys 615, and he says thoughts on when AJ Arcuri and Kevin Jarvis are actually going to be back playing. Thanks for waiting. So I'm gonna have to have somebody else do that for me in the future. Apologize for that. Thanks for waiting. Arcuri is listed in the 2 deep this week for the first time since I think the Western Michigan game. But you know what? When he played against Western Michigan, that was kind of a surprise. We didn't know he was going to play. He was injured in August, came back for the Western Michigan game. There was a little bit of a surprise. Played late in the game in a blowout situation, retweaked a lower body injury. So this is the first time his name has been in the actual 2 deep at number 2 left tackle behind Tyler Higbee. And I'm guessing that means he's going to be able to play this week. Kevin Jarvis, D'Antonio was asked about it today, and he said no, Jarvis is not on the 2 deep. And he made sure, he said he's not on the 2 deep, is he? And he looked out to his officers to make sure that he was not mistakenly placed on the 2 deep. So Jarvis definitely not playing this week. But I'll throw another name out there. Colt Chewins is still working, still trying to come back, still in practice, trying to get better. It's a back issue that flared back up. He was close to coming back in September, had a relapse. He has not given up, and he's giving it a go. In the meantime, last year I wrote so much, everyone wrote so much about the injuries Michigan State had and really beat home that idea throughout the season. That was a big reason why the offense struggled. This year, we haven't written it that much, but it pertains to the offensive line again. I mean, Tyler Higbee's doing what he can at left tackle, but he's basically a backup guard. Matt Carrick should be a backup guard right now. Jordan Reed, someone should be pushing for that starting job at right tackle. Although in terms of pass protection, he actually graded out pretty well, I think, in it was either the Wisconsin game or, believe it or not, the Ohio State game. He gave up one loud one in the Ohio State game, but graded out in the green above 75, according to Pro Football Focus. And he had the one mistake, but I didn't. Let's see, maybe it was the Wisconsin game. But anyway, if you have Arcuri in there at left tackle, Chewins possibly at right tackle, because he played a lot of right tackle in August camp and in the spring. And you have Jarvis at right guard. Arcuri, Chewins, and Jarvis. Now, Chewins and Jarvis were up-and-comers for a long time. Jarvis started as a true freshman. Arcuri had injury problems earlier in his career, played a tiny bit last year, played in the spring and looked good. And I was talking about him all off-season, that he looked like a legit left tackle. Talked about that in the green-white game. When I went back and looked at it, I thought he looked like a legit left tackle. Built well, athletic, long arms, moved well, passed the eye test, and moved well. He was a left tackle. Then he gets injured. And, when I was saying that, it wasn't really being mentioned by coaches yet. And, of course, it had not been reported because it hadn't been talked about. But as we got into August and Big Ten Media Days, it was mentioned. And Arcuri had climbed up to number 1 in the depth chart before he was injured. Now, just pause for a second. Let's say Arcuri would have come in and been a pleasant surprise, played left tackle, and been a good functional left tackle, better than Higbee. Nothing against Higbee, but let's just talk about this for a second. If you have Arcuri at left tackle, a healthy Chewins at right tackle, and Jarvis at right guard, if I know, everybody has injuries. Michigan had injuries at the beginning of the year. Offensive line injuries happen. But they didn't happen much in 2013, 14, 15, and those teams, of course, did some great things. Happened a little bit. Travis Jackson was hurt here and there, but let's think about that, like the 2015 team or 2014. Let's say, all right, this team this year lost Arcuri, Chewins, Jarvis for 7 games and out for the foreseeable future. Go to 2014. Let's take 2 tackles and an interior player. Let's take Jack Conklin, Donovan Clark, Jack Allen. Let's take them out. Do those teams play on New Year's Day? I kind of doubt it. Does Connor Cook become what he was? Would Langford have been what he was if you take those three players out? Now I know Conklin and Allen are NFL players, and those players that is mentioned are not NFL players. However, if Chewins has a healthy career, maybe he would have built toward that. Maybe Jarvis would too. Not sure. Point is, you take away two tackles and a key interior offensive lineman, it's going to have an impact, and it has had an impact on this year for sure. Now, let's go back over here to take a couple more questions on the YouTube chat area. Old Tuck out of Austin via Ludington, Michigan. Because Old Tuck, he's a little bit sour toward me because I still have Lake Huron ranked number 1 in my Great Lakes power rankings. I've got Lake Erie back down to the bottom again because the perch are not biting. And we've talked about that on the bunker a lot. All right. Old Tuck asks, well, I'm not saying that they're not biting. I don't know if the perch are there. The numbers are down. Anyway, but walleye is way up. That's why Erie had moved up to number 4 in the Great Lakes power rankings. All right. Old Tuck asks, is Foster Loyer from the basketball team, is he going to be trusted 8 to 10 minutes against good teams? And what if he's not? Good question. You know, last year, what was he? In some games, played 2 or 3 minutes. And, you know, they ran Cassius Winston into the ground out of necessity, and it caught up to him. In February, his shot accuracy decreased, and then the knee soreness flared up, and his wheels were not quite 100% in March. Loyer, you might remember, played about 10 minutes in the loss at Louisville in the Big Ten ACC Challenge last December. Winston was in foul trouble. Matt McQuaid was not available, and Loyer ended up having to play 10 minutes in that game, wasn't quite ready, and had some, you know, had some freshman struggles. Didn't do badly, and Louisville didn't really attack him. But can he do it better this year? And he had a big game. Loyer also had a big game against Ohio State, remember. Now, can he do it on a regular basis this year? That's something they've got to figure out. You're asking me, can he? He's thicker. He's stronger. We've seen him in practice. It's not like you're going to see a big change in what he can do moving from point A to point B. Can he handle things from a poise standpoint, an experience standpoint, and give you 5 good minutes? Yes, he can. He can give you 5 minutes a half. Question is, can he do it better than Rocket Watts? Rocket Watts is playing the wing. He's an off guard. He's a combo guard. Rocket Watts is bigger, stronger, tougher, poised, passing the ball well. They're real happy with him. I was at practice tonight. Watts doing a good job. Watts injured his Achilles prior to the Gonzaga scrimmage, and he kind of tweaked something a little bit tonight, and they put ice on it, and he says he's okay. So that bears a little bit of watching too. But that's something that's going to be fleshed out in November, December. Some of these directional games against, you know, Central and Western, I think, are on the schedule this year, and the other ones, the usual low major, mid majors that come in. Backup point guard minutes, it's audition time. Who can handle backup point guard? Loyer's going to have to show that he can do it. Not only offensively, but defense is half the game. And Rocket Watts is playing good defense back there. Loyer has to show that he can do it. So you're asking me if he can do it? Yeah, he can. I think Loyer can. But can he do it better than Watts? Great question. That remains to be seen. All right, Old Tuck. Miles Williams, Ken Tinney, Gus Ornstein, or Chase Dumford? Oh, out of those guys, who had the shortest career? Ken Tinney. Ken Tinney, John L. Smith era, defensive back, good prospect. Showed up. It's my understanding, I don't know. I think he wouldn't go to class. So he lasted about 2 weeks. Ornstein was around for a season. He threw an interception against Nebraska. Ornstein wasn't bad. Transferred from Notre Dame, I think, then transferred somewhere else and got a look for a while in the World League of American Football or maybe an NFL camp. Miles Williams, Chase Dumford. Chase Dumford out of Kentucky, right? That was D'Antonio's first class. He lasted 3 or 4 days, maybe? Or he never showed up. Dumford never showed up, I think. All right. Spartans Forever says, any thoughts on why some of the other beat writers seem to be pushing the retirement narrative in regards to Coach D? Seems odd. I don't always know what the others writers are saying. I don't listen to all their podcasts. A lot of good people, a lot of talented people, hard workers. Some of them have podcasts. A lot of good journalists. So I don't know who's saying that. I've had some conversations with some people about that. I know Jack Ebling. I've spoken with him about it, and over under on how many more games D'Antonio is going to win in his career. Talked about things like that. But pushing the narrative, I think it's. I don't know. I don't think there's I don't know. I'm not going to speculate on any of that. But there is a question here. I've got a football set of questions and I've got a basketball set of questions. And there was a football question pertaining to that, and I'll just skip right down to it because it's a hot button issue. It was my question number 5 on my football list, but I'll go to it right now. And it's from Realtor Evan. That's Realtor Evan, like real estate. Realtor Evan from Bloomfield Village, Michigan. He asks, who are your top 3 head coach candidates if Mark D'Antonio were to retire? Who, if any, from the current staff would get an interview? 1, I don't think D'Antonio is going to retire. Now, if the season goes off the cliff and they finish 4-8 and he gets sick of it and other stuff crops up, maybe. But right now, I don't think he has any plans to retire. I think he wants to plant his feet, plant his post foot, fight back, and he's a former athlete. He's a coach. They are wired to think that they can fix something. They go to work to fix it. That's what he's going to do. He's going to compete. I think they have a chance to turn this around. It's going to be difficult. This weekend's going to be so important. So the question is, he asks, if he were to retire. First of all, I don't think he's going to retire. Secondly, if he retires, the question is, who are my top 3 candidates? He's asking me who mine are. That's different than what I think Michigan State would do. If he were to retire, I'm not sure what Michigan State would do. The new president, Stanley, does he hire a search firm? Does he hand it over to Beekman? Does Beekman hand it over to a search firm? Or does Beekman stay in-house with Alan Haller and Tom Izzo, and they go after it like they did with Hollis when they hired D'Antonio? If they go 9-3 and he retires, does D'Antonio join the search committee? And it's D'Antonio and Izzo pick somebody, and D'Antonio might already have someone in mind, probably an in-staff guy, an in-house guy. If they go 9-3, they win out. Mike Tressel, if the defense is great down the stretch, Tressel's going to get a look, right? If the offense catches fire, Salem's going to get an interview. Wouldn't seem likely right now, but we're saying what ifs. Perlis used to always say, I don't play what ifs. Well, we play what ifs here, right? It's fun. If they go 6-6 and he retires, those guys, Tressel and Salem, they don't get an interview. I wouldn't think. People have had an eye on Pat Narduzzi since he left. I never thought that he'd be a guy that would want to come back unless he was not happy with his bosses at Pittsburgh, which I do not know to be the case. But if you're not happy with your bosses, your supervisors, people will leave anywhere if they're not happy with their supervisors. Brett Bielema, he left Madison, Wisconsin because, among other things, he didn't feel like he could competitively compensate his assistant coaches, among other things. He left Wisconsin to go to Arkansas. Shocked everybody. Then Wisconsin, the coach, left to Oregon State. Went from Wisconsin to Oregon State. Shocked everybody because he didn't like working under Alvarez. Johnny Orr left Michigan as a basketball coach to go to Iowa freaking State because he didn't like the Canham-Schembechler thing going on. I don't know. I have no reason to believe that Narduzzi's not happy at Pittsburgh, firstly. Secondly, he's not the type of guy that would go somewhere just personality-wise. If I know him like I think I do, he's not a guy that's just going to cut tail and run. He's a loyal guy that would want to stay there and work it out there. And you might say, well, Narduzzi's not really set the world on fire at Pittsburgh. True, but they're 5-2 right now. They're playing pretty well. They beat Syracuse, beat Central Florida, a couple of teams that everybody had marked down as losses for them. They played Penn State tough. He made an error late in that game going for the field goal late in the game when mathematically probably shouldn't have. But you look at the remainder of the schedule for Pittsburgh, they could finish 10-2. They play Miami, Georgia Tech, North Carolina, Virginia Tech, Boston College. Now you could also lose 3 of those games, But if Pitt goes 10-2 and he's looking to move, you at least give him a phone call. But I don't think it's his personality to cut the rug. Cut the rug, it means dancing, right? Wrong analogy. Wrong cliche. To cut and whatever the rest of that cliche is. I wouldn't expect him to do that. So, Tressel, Salem, Narduzzi, depending on your record. If you're looking outside of the family, I don't think D'Antonio's going to retire. I would look at Luke Fickell at Cincinnati. It's a no-brainer right now. Big Ten roots, Ohio coaching, done a great job recruiting for the Bearcats down there in the greater Cincinnati area. He's defeated Michigan State for recruits down there. They won 10 games last year. They had another big win last week. Did well against Tulsa. I mean, that Cincinnati is a great proving ground for Big Ten coaches. And Fickell is a no-brainer that you would call. And depending on how, what D'Antonio's record is when he finishes, D'Antonio's input, is he pro Fickell or not? They used to be real close. Then on the recruiting trail might have butted heads a little bit, but I think I've seen them interact a little bit at camps since then. And D'Antonio holds grudges against some people, but not against others, I don't think. You've noticed that D'Antonio and Urban Meyer settled things down and have great respect for one another. When they first began, D'Antonio and Michigan State had just won a Big Ten title. Meyer came into the Big Ten like a bull in a china shop with, pushing the envelope recruiting-wise, going after a Michigan State committed player and Savon Pittman, among other things. Very first game, when their first meeting, the year that Ohio State went 12-0 and they were not eligible for a bowl game. Very physical game, very chippy game. As those two programs played one another. It's like a couple of boxers. I mean, you watch boxing all the time. They're posing and talking bad things at the press conference, and during the pre-fight instructions, they come out and they're wailing on each other. By the 12th round, when it's over, they hug. How many times have you seen that in boxing? Happens all the time, right? By the time Urban Meyer was done at Ohio State, Urban Meyer and D'Antonio, I'm not going to say they hugged, but there was a lot of respect there, and Fickell was stayed on the staff there after 1 year as an interim at Ohio State. And I think that all smoothed over. So Fickell, if I'm athletic director, gets a phone call. Matt Campbell at Iowa State gets a phone call, but I hear his buyout is extravagant, so I'm not sure he's available. I don't know, does an Iowa State guy leave Iowa State for Michigan State? I don't know. And if Fickell is red hot, does he wait for something better than Michigan State? And I hate to break it to you, there's better jobs out there than Michigan State. Others off the board, I would look at Dave Clawson at Wake Forest. He's been winning there. I've not seen him a lot, but listening to some interviews last year, he impressed me just in terms of, I think he's a D'Antonio type in terms of being serious about the university community as a whole, academics and all those things. And he was head coach at Bowling Green, so he's recruited in Ohio, spent 5 years at Bowling Green, went 8-5 and 10-3 in his last 2 years, was at Richmond and in the FCS level, and coached there for 4 years, took them to the quarterfinals 1 year, semifinals another year. Now he's at Wake Forest, and he's playing better than he should. They're doing better than the resources should allow. People talk about Matt Rule at Baylor. Again, I don't think he's available to Michigan State. He's got East Coast connections and all those things, but I think he would hold out for something bigger. He's undefeated at Baylor. Maybe, a lot of you guys are going to be mad at me saying, Comparoni, what are you talking about? You're selling Michigan State short. Michigan State's a great place. That's what Valenti would tell me, and he used to tell me that. He and I used to discuss this way back when John L. Smith was on the hot seat. And Valenti firmly believed that Michigan State was a great university. He's like, Jim, you don't know how great it is at Michigan State. You don't know, he came from New York and loved Michigan State and was attracted to it and still loves the university. And he has high expectations for the athletic department. In a lot of ways, higher than mine. In every way, higher than mine. So, Valenti, if he were athletic director, he'd probably go after Matt Rule. And I sit back and say, yeah, he's probably not interested. But if a job opening came up, there would be people that would show interest through their agents that might surprise you. Would Rule? I kind of doubt it. But you never know who's going to send a letter in. I mean, Brett Bielema, we just mentioned him a minute ago. Maybe he's ready to go. He's a D-line coach of the Patriots now. Went down to Arkansas, failed. Um, who knows about, you don't know who's going to come in. But again, I prefaced it with this, and I'll end it with this. I don't think D'Antoni is retiring this year. I don't think he wants to. I don't think he's planning to. He's planting in and fighting back. Big game this weekend. Let's go to the YouTube questions. Where did I drop? Where did I dump? Where did I stop off last time? All right, Old Tuck. And yeah, now Old Tuck, I appreciate you chiming in. I keep asking. All right, I'll let you ask another question. It's my fault. My eyes are not very good, so I got to squint at this thing, even with these glasses, and Old Tuck keeps jumping up. We appreciate Old Tuck being here. He's had perfect attendance here, and we appreciate that. He says, any idea why the running back position has been a challenge for recruiting in the past 5 years, given the offensive velocity and guys like Bell, Lorenzo, Ringer, Ezor, Irvin, Langford, Tony Howard, etc.? Tony Howard, huh? Was that touchdown Tony Howard out of Cleveland Heights? Anyway, well, first of all, I mean, Blake Ezor, that's not going to get you any recruits this day and age. They don't know who that is. Lorenzo White, they don't know who he is, but they can be educated on it. Jordan Simmons, the running back out of Georgia, who committed last week, was at Michigan State for the Indiana game. Lorenzo White was honored that night. Lorenzo White from Fort Lauderdale, coming 1,000 miles north, all-time great, retired number, College Football Hall of Fame. Something that long ago can compute a little bit with Jordan Simmons and his father. Well, that's a great example of someone who came up and still loves the university and all those things. So Lorenzo White a little bit. But, Cedric Irvin, he's got a son that's pretty good, is on the radar for the future. Langford, okay. Le'Veon Bell, okay, that's the one. Le'Veon Bell. 2 years ago, the best running back in football, right? So Michigan State should have been able to recruit better at the running back position than they have. Connor Hayward was a project. Functional last year for a bad offense. Y'all know he left. Ladarius Jefferson, state championship quarterback. Functional last year. Functional this year, but not what Michigan State has had in the past and what they could have and should have at running back, especially in an era in which Le'Veon Bell is doing his thing professionally. So I get what you're saying. Both of those guys, Ladarius Jefferson being a high school quarterback, Connor Hayward was a high school quarterback and wide receiver. They were both projects at running back. They didn't play running back at high school, so they were projected there, literally projects, and they were okay, but didn't really have a high ceiling of potential. That being said, TJ Duckett was a project too. He was a high school quarterback, defensive player, came in, played some linebacker, defensive end a little bit during the first month of his first year in 1999, I think it was. But those guys don't quite have the horsepower of TJ Duckett, of course. But you're right. Running back recruiting has been one of an area where Michigan State has hit substandard. They have not reached their potential recently. Elijah Collins, pretty good. Not surprised that he overtook those guys. Needed to see it still, but I always said that he was the best pure running back out of the group. Didn't know if that would show itself on the field, but that's what I thought based on some things that I'd seen prior to this year, and it turned out to be true. We'll have to wait and see what Elijah Collins' ceiling of potential is. Let's go back to the mailbag. Let's go back to basketball. 428 Grove Street from Elmhurst, Illinois asks, what is your gut feeling on the Hauser waiver, and who starts on the wing with Joshua Langford out? Of course, Joshua Langford, sad news today. Izzo said that he learned last night being Monday night after practice, that Joshua Langford, as you know by now, out until January with stress reaction in his foot, I think they're calling it. Very sad. Langford was at practice tonight, and it was same old Joshua Langford. Baseball hat on, smile on his face, somewhat of a smile. Not as much as last February or March, but and he spoke with us a little bit. We will run that video at SpartanMag.com later tonight, probably. And he's always mentioned his faith in religion, and that's something that, because of that enables him to go forward without getting down. He's always kind of mentioned that. Tonight he mentioned it 5 times as often as he used to. No question he's relying on that. No question he's hurting. But honestly, he's of the mindset everything happens for a reason. Can he redshirt? We talked about this on the VCast with Paul Konendijk over at the football building. That's probably up on SpartanMag.com right now, by now. So after this, if you want to check that out, if you're not sick of me already. But we talked about that. Langford has said that he's not considering a red shirt, doesn't want to. And I asked him after he made that statement, had a little bit of maybe a 2-on-1, 1-on-1 time with him. And I said, why is that? Is it just that you don't want to give up on possibly coming back this year? And he said he just wants to live in the moment right now and do everything he can to get healthy as soon as he can. And if he's healthy enough to play 5 games at the end of the season, he will play 5 games and he won't consider a red shirt. But if he's unable to come back, he didn't shut the door on possibly coming back next year. I don't think that's something he wants to do. But if that's the door that's open to him, he might do it. Does that create a little bit of an awkward situation in terms of how many scholarship slots you have for next year? Yes, it does. Because in talking to Michigan State basketball coaches about recruiting, it's not only recruiting and trying to get players, but it's also trying to anticipate how much roster room you have. And if he comes back, they would welcome him certainly as a personality. What kind of player could he be if he has to sit out another year? We don't know. But, all right, getting back to the question, what's my gut feeling on the Hauser waiver? I think last night I put it at 50-50. Today, Izzo revealed that with Joey Hauser, the transfer from Marquette is trying to gain immediate eligibility. The NCAA denied it, and Michigan State is gathering more information and reapplied. They either already have reapplied or they are getting ready to reapply, and it has to happen quickly because time's running out on this. And Izzo says it's not uncommon to reapply, and it's not uncommon for a team to reapply on something like this and have it go through positively. So they think they've got a case. If they didn't think they had a case, they wouldn't be reapplying. So I'm going to keep it at 50-50. That's all I know right now. I said back here on this podcast, a month ago, I think it might have been, I didn't say 80%, but that's kind of the idea I would have gotten. Then I would have gotten maybe a 30% later on when Izzo told me flat out, at that point, he was really trying to decrease expectation on all this. I don't know, maybe he thought it might hurt Hauser's chances if too many people were talking about it. I don't know. He didn't tell me specifically, but maybe I'll ask him about that someday. So, the other question here, who starts on the wing with Langford out? The answer is Gabe Brown. Gabe Brown, I think, is going to start. It would have been Kyle Arns, but Kyle Arns, who did start against Gonzaga in the scrimmage last weekend in Denver, the closed-doors scrimmage, no media could watch it. Some information leaked out, and Izzo said a little bit more about that scrimmage today. But Kyle Arns started at the wing in that one and went down with another ankle injury. And Kyle Arns has been injured almost every year since 7th grade. Good kid. And, he thought he was done when he suffered that injury against Michigan in the Big Ten Tournament Championship game last year. And as he was on the court, he thought for sure he was done. That was it. Didn't want to do it anymore. But by the time May rolled around, well, in the days after that, that injury was not as severe as he thought it was at that instant. By the time May rolled around, Arns decided he wanted to come back. And they were happy that he is back, but now he goes down with another ankle. And with Kyle Arns, bless his heart, but just not sure. I mean, what are the chances that he can come back from this in 3 weeks and build and have a good season and stay injury-free for the rest of the year? Horrible thing to try to speculate on and guess about, but odds are probably against it. It's going to be Gabe Brown to start. So, backup minutes, looking at Rocket Watts. Winston playing some wing if Lawyer comes in. But the wing situation, not real deep. I mean, Watts is a guard, not really a lengthy wing type of guy. Malik Hall is a guy that is a freshman that some projected to have some wing capabilities. but he showed up and he's pretty thick. He's a big dude. And the practices I've seen, he hasn't played any wing. Could that change now? I don't know. You remember Kenny Goins played some wing out of necessity a little bit last year and in previous years. Kyle Arns played some power forward out of necessity 3 years ago, 2 years ago, whatever it was, when Miles Bridges' freshman year, when they had all those injuries at the center position. So Malik Hall, to learn two positions would be asking a lot. I don't know. But, and Connor George, a minute here, a minute there out of emergency, maybe. Brock Washington. Keebler played in a Final Four, a walk-on that waited his turn after Kalen Lucas went down. Would not be ideal. If you're trying to win a national championship, to ask Connor George or Brock Washington to play 5 minutes a game, as long as everybody stays healthy, that's not going to happen. But it's Gabe Brown to start, and behind them, it gets a little bit cloudy. You lose a big timer there in Langford. Now, someone asked, we'll stay on the Langford subject again, and I want to say all right, I want to give the guy the credit for the question. Staying with basketball, MSU Polo 925 out of Rockford, Michigan. He says, with Langford out, Joshua Langford out, will that push Tom Izzo toward playing less of a tempo style and relying more on ball screen offense again in the half court? And the answer is no. Even with fewer players, they're still going to want to run. But if Arns and Langford are both out, and Arns is out continues to have problems, they'll still try to run, because even last year when they played 7 in the NCAA tournament, they still tried to run, and they were effective at running. So, 3 weeks ago, they were practicing full court pressure for the purpose of tiring out the opponent and also tiring themselves out like they did in 2005. Meaning that they've got so many players on their team that if Malik Hall is only going to play 9 minutes, they're going to press and make him be tired and make him feel like he played 20. That's what they did in 2005, went to the Final Four. That was kind of the mindset this year, or Izzo was looking at that possibility. But now with Langford out and Arns, if this is going to happen with him, I don't think you can press. I think that's out the window. In terms of up-tempo transition, they're still going to do that because that's a big part of their weaponry. The ball screen defense on the half court, they've always done that. They always will, because some teams get back on defense and make you play half court. And it's been ball screen offense, since the beginning. Different variations, and it'll continue to be that way. There was one other question about Langford. Let me see if I can find it. Okay, question number 5. I don't have who this is from. Sorry if you posted this on the Final Forum message board. I don't have your name, but he says, but it's a question a lot of people are talking about. He says, how concerned are you about Langford being out? Have you seen anyone in practice that you feel can take over for his role? Again, it's going to be Gabe Brown. How concerned am I about Langford being out? Just went over that a little bit. That's a big reason why Michigan State was preseason number 1. Langford being part of the puzzle. Langford, 15 points a game, 40% three-point shooter. Needed to improve some of his shot selection, some of his IQ. And I think that was still in progress last year. And if he'd gone through all last year, you don't know. Would they have still gone to the Final Four? You'd hate to go back and replay it, because any little thing can upset the apple cart. You don't want to go back and disrupt the continuum, right? And I don't know. If Langford if he had played last year and improved his IQ, shot selection, not forcing a fall away 17-footer with 20 seconds on the shot clock, that type of thing. If he had worked through that as a junior, as a go-to guy, because he was always a complimentary guy prior to that, as a go-to guy, if not the go-to guy, he could have become a better player and been even better this year. would have been great. So in that regard, you're concerned that you don't have Langford. In reality, I've been saying on the Underground Bunker message board, on the Final Forum message board, I've been saying for weeks that this Langford thing is not going to be all ironed out smoothly. And when it became known that he did not play in the Gonzaga game, I said, get used to it. It's going to be like this for a while. Izzo told us it was going to be until December, until the real Josh Langford came back. I watched him in the first practice of the year, and he's giving effort, but he just wasn't moving real rapidly. And you remember when he was a freshman, he had a hamstring injury of some sort. And he was kind of like, he didn't have a long athletic stride. It was like a choppy stride, like he wasn't even finishing his strides. And that lasted pretty much maybe all year. Until the very end, he played more athletically in the NCAA tournament against Miami. Played better as a sophomore. But he's never been a fast healer. And I just was not confident that the Josh Langford we saw 12 months ago, I just wasn't sure that was going to come back this year. So, how concerned am I about it? I was concerned about it before today, that he might not be all of what he is until maybe January, and fitting that back into the on-court chemistry was going to be not the easiest thing. And if he had come back and been a fraction of himself or a percentage of himself, then you've got fans getting critical about it. I mean, last year the fans became critical of Brian Lewerke when he was trying to play injured. So I think there could have been some strain there. So how concerned am I? More concerned than I was 24 hours ago, but I was concerned about him and this team prior to this. I've said all along, last week on the message board, or on the mailbag, people were asking me what I think the chances are that they will do better than last year. And I said, well, last year they're Final Four, and they won 2 Big Ten titles. Doing better than that means repeating both Big Ten titles and going to the national title game. Odds of that are less than, come on, seriously, it's like less than 15, 20%. I mean, 15% is a great chance. No one else has a better chance than 15%, I wouldn't think. So chances are not good that you can replicate that. They've got a better chance than anybody if Langford's healthy and built on what he did a couple years ago. But it's going to be difficult. And the difference is Winston and Tillman are so good and so good together. I rewatched the Michigan State Duke game a couple of nights ago, and I was surprised. I didn't notice at the time. I was at courtside watching it, but Winston played a lot of that game with a smile on his face, which was amazing. As intense as that was, smile on his face. And the telepathy between Winston and Tillman. I didn't, when you watch it again in a relaxed atmosphere, some of those things come to the fore a little bit more. The way he just probes and just at the optimal time, dishing out of the ball screen offense or in transition. And then it showed up on the telecast. When the late inbound, when Tillman threw it to Winston and he ran out the last 5 seconds, you saw Tillman look at him and give him a little wink and a little one of these things. Tillman told us that after the game. I didn't see it when it happened. You go back and look at it. That was not telepathic. That was a visual clue from one to the other, and they're going to be even better at it this year. So that battery makes them so strong. And Aaron Henry's going to take his game up a level. I mean, his in-between game down the stretch last year was so poised and mature. Adding the outside jumper now, and his athleticism has always been there. It's even more refined now. All right, let's see. Let's go back to the YouTube questions. Kevin Schneider. Simon was from Sault Ste. Marie. Thanks, Kevin. Sault Ste. Marie. I thought it was the UP. I was thinking Traverse City, but for some reason why was I thinking UP? And as far as I know, that's the only scholarship player from the UP since 1995. The only one joining, Solani, the punter, was Solani 1993, whatever, but that was a Perlis recruit. But Brian Simon from Sault Ste. Marie. Thanks, Kevin. Blong John. Wasn't Fonseca from Wixom? I'm not sure where he was from, but he lasted about a week. Old Tuck says, yes, he was. Thanks, Old Tuck. Desert Spartan from beautiful and sunny Chandler, Arizona. Thank you, Desert Spartan. It's rainy and dreary here in East Lansing, so don't rub it in. Hey, I don't mind the rain. I actually drove around campus today and just smiled because the leaves were in peak color. Bright reds, bright orange. The bright reds, when you go down, I think it's Shaw Lane, Is Shaw? I should know this, but is Shaw Lane the one like between like Holmes Hall and yeah Shaw Hall Shaw Lane, right? Those maple trees. I don't even know what those are, but there's like a line of maple trees right down through there, and they've gotten bigger. Of course, trees get bigger every year. News for you there, but the trees. I mean, I've been around this campus forever, but they were trees, but now they're like trees. Beautiful sight. Going around that circle there by Chittenden Hall and Cook Hall, Morill Hall. The leaves. It's peak right now. I saw Doug Warren on the way in to the press conference today, and I said, "Man, it's nice. It's gonna be a football game in actual autumn this weekend because there's just gonna be the one autumn game this year." Yeah, they played Indiana in September, and they'll play Illinois in November, and there'll still be some leaves and whatever. But in terms of like hardcore apple cider leaves, it's right now, and it's you'd like to have like 3 games in this window, but they're gonna have the one. As long as it doesn't rain too much, because if it rains too much, then the leaves fall down. That's not cool. But today, even though it rained a little bit today, not dreary. I said dreary a moment ago. Beautiful on campus today. Even though it was 51 and drizzly, I liked it. Doors Fan 91, do you think Michigan State can recruit to fit this new style offense? Alante Brown would seem like a must-get. Alante Brown is the guy that committed last year and then decommitted and bounced around a couple other places, ended up at a prep school. Michigan State's taking a look at him again, and he's supposed to be in this weekend. Yeah, must-get. Maybe. I mean, he's an athletic guy with some jump to him, and they can use all the players in that category that they could get. Are they going? Do I think Michigan State can recruit to fit this new style of offense? Well, it's not that. It's not. It's everybody's playing offenses like this, including the high schools. So most players are going to be a better fit for this than the other way. For instance, Matt Dotson came to Michigan State as a 4-star tight end out of Cincinnati Moeller, but spent most of his high school career split out as a wide receiver, and everybody's running. Looking back at his film, I mean, Moeller was running that too. So you bring Dotson in and you try to morph him into an attached to the offensive line, Michigan State pro-style tight end, and that was difficult to recruit to make the transition for some players. So I don't think it'll be a problem. Everybody runs the same system. Doors Fan also asks, anything new on Jalen Terry? What about the Canadian big you mentioned they were looking at? The Canadian big that was in Bediako, like 6'9". He was at the Michigan State Tulsa game, and I've not heard anything new about Bediako, but Michigan State is off to a solid start. Got him to come in for that visit. He's 6'9", he's long. He's listed at 6'10" by Rivals.com. He's playing for Andrews Osborne Academy in Willoughby, Ohio, but he's originally from Brampton, I think it is, Ontario. A lot of jump, a lot of length. Michigan State's in there. Nothing new yet. Jalen Terry, haven't heard anything new about him. Michigan State's coaches were surprised about it. Michigan State's going to try to get in there and slug it out. I'll ask around to try to get a little bit more information on that, but that one's going all the way to April. So he's going to take some visits. Is it going to be an auction? I don't know. I'll have to wait and see. All right, let's see. Let's go back to football. Hayden V8 out of rainy Grand Rapids, Michigan says, what with the information that I have, what can I say? What was the deal with Shaq Brown? Sounds like it was an injury. Shaq Brown is back in the 2 deep today, this week. He's not played since the Tulsa game, and he was real close to even with Josh Butler at the cornerback position. Mysterious injury out. They like to keep injuries mysterious. They don't like people to know what the injury is so people can target it and so forth. I talked to Josiah Scott today a little bit after practice, and he's excited about Shaq Brown coming back, getting back into the rotation, and he would have helped against Ohio State. Kalen Gervin struggled in that game. So this game against Penn State, and I talked about this in the VCast for a moment. It's interesting when you go back and look at last year's victory over Penn State. First of all, at that time, Michigan State's pass defense had gotten riddled by Arizona State threw for about, 340 yards through the air. Utah State threw for a lot. Someone else did too. Northwestern threw for a lot of yardage. At this time last year, I was telling people that teams are throwing for a lot of yardage, but they're putting up a ton of pass attempts because teams were abandoning the run. They didn't think they could run against Michigan State, so they were throwing the ball a lot. So if you looked at just the raw yards per pass attempt, Michigan State was, right around the middle of the pack in the Big Ten in yards per pass attempt, which is the most important pass defensive stat. So then, really, when the weather changed and it became more difficult to throw 50 times in a game, that helped, and Michigan State's defense ended up being a top 10 team nationally. So Michigan State now has given up 30-plus points against Indiana, 30-plus against Ohio State, 30-plus against Wisconsin, and there's some concern about that for good reason. Michigan State's defense has not been as good as last year in a lot of ways. Shaq Brown coming back can help a little bit. Other things need to happen also. Last year against Penn State, that was the game Michigan State beat them 21-17. That was the game that turned the tide for Michigan State's defense. After the game, James Franklin, Penn State's head coach, said that he was disappointed that Penn State was unable to throw the ball against a defense that had given up a lot of throwing yardage. I thought to myself, what I just said. Yards per pass attempt had not been great against Michigan State. Total yards looked good. Sometimes stats can lie. Even when you throw for 320, 325, even those stats can lie a little bit in today's style of modern football. So James Franklin was upset about that. Looked back at that game, and Michigan State, here's the thing. Michigan State against Penn State last year had a wrinkle that they hadn't done as much as they did in that game. They'd never done it in the D'Antonio era. They played cover 3. They always play cover. They play a lot of cover 3 when they blitz, maybe a third down passing situation. Michigan State played more 1st and 10, cover 3. They played more cover 3, that's 3 deep. Usually it's 2 cornerbacks and a safety deep, playing a deep, 3 of them deep zone. Sometimes it can be a corner and 2 safeties. But Michigan State likes to play that when they blitz. In that game, they played it when they blitzed, but they also played it without blitzing. I assume to try to keep a different type of safety net on KJ Hamler. Hamler had a 5-yard touchdown reception in that game. Penn State loves to go deep, right? They were going deep against Michigan all the time. That's because Michigan presses and plays a lot of man-to-man. They went deep almost every possession. They went deep once. Sometimes it led to some 3-and-outs. I think Penn State had 6 or 7 3-and-outs in that game. Michigan State will do quarters press, and depending on the route combinations, that press quarters becomes like man-to-man, and you can force that onto them and go deep, and Penn State goes deep. Hamler can fly. Number 5 can fly. They're scary, and Clifford throws a good deep ball, really good deep ball. But Michigan State last year, I assume, surprised Penn State with as much cover 3 as they played last year. Will they play a lot of cover 3 this year? Yes, I think they will. Maybe they won't start showing it till second quarter, maybe even the second half. I don't know. Be interesting to watch, interesting to chart. Follow me on Twitter during the game. I'll be keeping an eye on it. Or go to the Underground Bunker message board for the live in-game thread, and we'll talk about it as it develops. But KJ Hamler, no question about it. You put him in a slot. If you're in man-to-man, you might want to bring your corner over, your best corner, and even if you have to play him in a slot, put him in the slot against him. You don't want to do it like Michigan did and leave a safety on there. They'll beat him. It's like when Michigan State played quarters over and over and over in 2015, got in the college football playoff against Alabama. Calvin Ridley, the fastest receiver in the country, 1st and 10 between the 40s. Set it in the pre-snap read when they get 1st and 10 between the 40s. They like to go deep, especially early in the second quarter. Early second quarter between the 40s. I told Grinzel and Konadike going deep right now to the slot. And they did. Touchdown. Because they matched up Ridley against the safety. I think, was it Isaiah, what's his name, out of Indianapolis? I can't remember who it was. But that's when, I talked to Tressel the next summer. And he said, yeah, there's times when you don't want the opposing offensive coordinator and quarterback to know that if they go this formation, you're going to match up this way. They can force a matchup, and then you end up with Calvin Ridley on a safety. Same thing with Hamler. You don't want them to formation you and force Hamler against Xavier Henderson or Dowell. I mean, there's NFL safeties that can't run with Hamler, right? So rotate to a cover 3 over the top. Make them throw underneath, see what happens. So cover 3 is what they did last year, more than they've ever done it before, and it worked. Held Penn State to 17 points. So now Penn State's had a year to go back and look at the film. What are they going to do? I would imagine Penn State, rather than going deep, would go more, if they see cover 3, you do sidelines. Comebacks to the sidelines, or if you have time to throw, which they probably should against Michigan State, you can still run Hamler deep seam route between the middle safety and the corner. There's a seam right there. If you get into tempo, shoot it right through there. Ohio State did that in 2014. Oregon did it in 2014 against cover 3. So we'll look to see what Penn State can do to adjust to the adjustment. It's a great thing about conference football, right? From year to year, adjustments build. Sparty 7-7. We're about an hour in right now. We'll go a few more minutes. We'll get through some of these questions. Sparty 7779 checking in from the heat wave in Los Angeles, California. He says, I read today that Hauser was denied permission to play this year by the NCAA. Can you explain what the rules are? How do other teams get their transfers approved? It's all case-by-case situations. And Michigan State is appealing, so it's not done yet. So if they're appealing, they think they've got a case. What's his situation? I think there was some unrest a little bit at his previous place in Marquette, and they are going by that and trying to use other precedents to support their case. That's all I know about that right now. Corey Robinson answering a question to Old Tuck about running back recruiting. Corey Robinson also talking about Michigan State in great spot for Alante Brown heading into his official visit this weekend. Thanks, Corey. Corey Robinson doing a great job. All right, to compound the question, Corey Robinson covers recruiting for SpartanMag.com. Thanks, Corey. Doing a great job. Appreciate it. To compound that question, Jordan Simmons is a great fit for the new offense. Ricky White and Ian Stewart are great fits for the offense. And the tight end from Dearborn can run. Great fit. I would agree. Tommy Guajardo from Dearborn is the most underrated commitment at this point in his class. Looks like a good tight end. Type of tight end they like to have. A good one. Ricky White had a big game last week. Marietta against McEachern. The biggest game of the year so far in the state of Georgia. Starting quarterback for McEachern is going to Florida. The starting quarterback for Marietta is going to Tennessee. I mean, literally dozens of Division I recruits on the field. Jordan Simmons played running back for McEachern. Ricky White played wide receiver for Marietta. Ricky White had a 68-yard catch. Simmons he rushed for about 95 yards on 19 carries going against a stacked Marietta defense. Big time football. I saw some of the highlights. I need to go looking for that tonight. Maybe I'll look for that tonight. Look on YouTube, because usually there's good sites that do highlights. Kind of like, is it the D Zone or State Champs in the state of Michigan? Both of those do a really great job. They do a lot of hard work, and I got a lot of respect for the people that do those sites and the service they provide for high school football fans and recruiting fans. And hopefully they're making a living out of it. It's great. Corey Robinson, talking about recruiting there. I'll just skip ahead. I'll come back to that just before we sign off. All right, let's go ahead and clear out the remainder of these questions. All right, question number 3 about football pertaining to the Penn State game again. MSU analyst out of Atlanta, Georgia. He says, with the week of rest, now the bye week, some time off, can the Michigan State defensive line now put a hole in the Penn State offensive line and cause major havoc for their whole operation? Great question. Michigan State's defense, I'll tell you what, at interviews today, Joe Bacci and Kenny Wilkes, just talking to them. I mean, you do interviews all year, and, the interviews get a little bit monotonous for us and for them, and they're tired. Hey, they had that twinkle in their eye back this week. You could just see Bacci and Wilkes and Lewerke and Josiah Scott, the week off, has agreed with them. I don't know what that's going to mean on the field, because in September they were fresh and they made a lot of mistakes. Not necessarily all those particular guys, but a lot of mistakes. They've been a mistake-riddled team all year. But if they were ever to really put it together and play with some physicality and some sharpness and some collective want to, the time would be right now when you have to do it. We've not seen them do it yet. I'm not predicting it's going to happen. But there's a lot of favorable intangibles pointing toward a good defensive effort, good defensive performance this weekend. Can they put a hole in the Penn State offensive line? Penn State's offensive line didn't play real well in the Michigan game or really the Iowa game. And Iowa's defensive front is not as great as it used to be, or as it usually is. Penn State was under 300 yards of total offense in both those games. Penn State was outgained by Iowa and Michigan, severely outgained by Michigan. And Paul and I talked about this in the VCast today. Everybody's talking about the moral victory that Michigan had, what they did offensively and how they caught fire. And, the Michigan offense is coming to life. Maybe. Shea Patterson, some people think it's the best game he's ever had at Michigan. Maybe. Saw a lot of guys drop passes. Running back did a few things here and there. The offensive line was better. But were they catching fire? Was the offensive line improving? Or was Penn State showing the wear of quarters 7 and 8 against Iowa, Michigan back-to-back? Just like Michigan State in quarters, or really right off the bat, but especially quarters 7 and 8 from Columbus, or actually quarters 3 and 4 in Madison. One game can bleed into the next. I think it did bleed into the next for Penn State last week. Now Penn State's got to do a third straight game. If Michigan State can deliver the type of physicality that Michigan and Iowa put on them. Iowa tries to be a physical team. They are not as physical as they usually are, but they're still a physical team, especially with Iowa playing at home at Kinnick, ticked off the week after they laid an egg against Michigan. Michigan wanting to prove something. Haven't been the most physical team of late, but they tried to run the ball more against Illinois in Champaign, where they run it 16 of the first 17 times and looked really good doing it. Lost control of that game for a little bit, finished it, and won that game. But you can see by the way they played against Illinois that they had tried to reconnect to the physical Harbaugh ways within the new Gaddis offense. And so Michigan has become more physical, gotten some players back. So now Penn State, even though Iowa and Michigan are not as greatly physical as they've been in the past, Michigan's building toward that. Point is, now Michigan State, who has not been physical, has had a week off. Michigan State's going to load up and present the best version of themselves in terms of physicality, fresh and motivated and desperate. So Penn State's going to see a physical opponent again for a third straight week. Michigan State after a week off. All that bodes well for Michigan State. It gives them a chance. That's why the spread is only about 5 or 6 points. So can they put a hole in them? I don't know, but the Penn State offensive line, I was watching that game against Michigan, and Penn State center and guards were having trouble with Dwumfor and Kemp, especially like in the second quarter when the game started to turn. The left guard, Gonzalez, he was honorable mention All Big Ten last year. The center, he's a team captain, second-year starter. The right guard, Miranda, is a first-year starter. I'll have to go back and watch that again, and I'll be watching the Iowa game again just to look to see what's going on with their offensive line. Might not be a real great strength for them. As they've rebuilt that program, offensive line has been the last part for Penn State to rebuild, in my estimation. I might change my mind on that by Thursday and Friday for the pre-snap read. We'll also have the Skull Session podcast with Big Mooby over there at SpartanMag.com. I'll be checking it out probably tonight. I've got some other things I need to do, but I want to rewatch the Iowa game against Penn State, Michigan again. Willikis tonight, though. I'm telling you, Willikis. Let's go to a Willikis question, because I know there's a Willikis question, and it pertains to what we're talking about right here. Let's see the question. All right, the guy's name is 84 Spartan out of Fenton, Michigan. Originally a Flint East Sider, he says. Posting now out of Fenton, Michigan. Home of the Tigers, orange and black. Know all about that one. 84 Spartan. 84 Spartan. I'm from Holly. We didn't get along with Fenton. They usually won. All right, he says, what did Ohio State and Wisconsin do to negate and neutralize Kenny Willekes? If those teams are double teaming Kenny Willekes, what is the reason Raequan Williams and the two Panashooks have not been able to exploit one-on-one matchups and get at the quarterback? So that's out of Fenton, Michigan 84 Spartan. Actually, Jacob Panashuk, I thought, was one of the few people that had a good game at Wisconsin. I thought he had a good game. I thought Antoine Simmons had some moments. Did I have anyone else? Let me try to find that. Wisconsin. Who else did I say had a decent game? Oh, Slade, the defensive tackle. He was two-gapping and getting some penetration against those big refrigerator offensive linemen. Not every single play, but often enough like, okay, Slade's a player. Slade, we've been hearing he's a player, and he played pretty well against Ohio State, especially early in the game. Slade did not play well against Indiana. Anyway, Slade, Simmons, and Jacob Panashuk were good. Jacob Panashuk had that sack at the end of the half, the Wisconsin game, sack fumble. So his numbers went up, but he did some decent things that day. Now, Kenny Willekes, why is he not as effective? Why is he not as productive? And Willekes, his tackles for loss numbers are way down compared to last year. I asked Willekes after practice tonight, how do you think you've done this year? And he says, not good enough. The effort's there, but he spent some time looking at technique, moves, mechanics, fundamentals, all those things. And he just wants to do something about it. Kenny Willekes is driven not only for this team, but his future also. Plus, his name is on the back of his jersey, and he wants to represent a little bit better. He's driven. He's going to try. But I watched the Ohio State game, and they double-teamed him early, and I'm not sure they did much after that. If I have time, I'll go back and watch it again, because that's really something I wanted to chart. And I did chart it, and I can't remember what I saw. I remember what I saw from a macro level, but I don't have micro examples. But I didn't see Ohio State double-teaming Kenny Willekes a lot. I'll need to go back and double-check to make sure, triple-check. Wisconsin game, long story short, I don't know, I don't think that he's getting all that double team attention. That it's easy to say he's getting double teamed. That's why he's not productive. And this is the reason that I really, as a younger journalist way back in 1998, when I really started to incorporate back then the VCR into what I wrote in back then the magazine in print, I'd really rely on it starting in 98 because of Robert Smith. Because I think it was 98, he was not having a real productive season. And people were talking about it, and some people were saying he was double-teamed. And I'd look into it and write articles, and I really didn't know if he was getting double-teamed. I watched coverages a little bit, watched the ball. Can't watch everything. You have to go back and watch it again. Was Robert getting double-teamed? Looked into it. Is Kenny Willekes getting double-teamed? I'm not seeing it a lot. He has space and room to make negative plays like he did last year, and he's setting out to do it beginning this weekend. All I can say is his heart's in the right place, and he's trying. Did he lose a little steam, a little step from the injury last year? Not sure, but let's let the season play out, and we will see. The two Panashuks, one of them last week was good. Mike Panashuk, last game against Wisconsin, not quite up to his usual standards. Raequan was solid, but you're asking if they're double teaming here, why isn't someone else getting loose elsewhere? I think Jacob did. They did contain the run reasonably well, although they let a couple of fly sweeps get out. When I looked at Pro Football Focus and their grades from the Wisconsin game, they had 4 Michigan State players on defense grade out at 71 or higher. I think it's a 100 scale. It's not really 71%, it's like 71 points. I don't know how they do it. I think it goes up to 100. Anyway, 70 and higher, you're in the green. Green, and then blue is like championship level. Green is like winning level. Red is bad on the color spectrum. There's no magenta in there, by the way. Smart Alex wondering about that. So, 4 players, according to the Pro Football Focus grades, which are not always the most accurate grades because they don't know what all of the assignments are on every play. And sometimes I disagree with their read on things. For instance, they graded Justin Lane as a negative last year against Arizona State. He gave up 1 or 2 passes to, what was the guy's name? N'Keal Henry, first-round draft choice wide receiver. But 30 other plays, he covered him really well. An NFL receiver. Gives up 2, and he had like a losing grade for the day by Pro Football Focus. I'm like, dude. When you're covering an NFL receiver, giving up 2 does not a bad day make. Anyway, but in terms of who graded well for Michigan State on defense against Wisconsin on that dreadful day, they had Raekwon Williams number 1, Jacob Panasiuk number 2, David Dowell number 3, Joe Bachie number 4. Those were the 4 guys that graded winning according to Pro Football Focus. The worst, and I saw this, Naquan Jones, Xavier Henderson. Xavier Henderson, good guy, smart guy, heart in the right area. Going to be a good one. Missed tackles that day, 2 or 3 or 4 of them. Missed coverage assignment on the 4th and 1 to the tight end. That's his guy. So Xavier Henderson's going to be in bounce back mode this weekend. But Naquan Jones was giving up movement on double teams. Often. Didn't look good. And that's not a guy that should be worn down because he's not playing more than 20 snaps a game. I did not disagree with either of those. By the way, Pro Football Focus, run defense, Kenny Willekes was number 1 on the team at 76.3. That's a healthy green. So run defense, Pro Football Focus liked Willekes. In terms of tackling, Josiah Scott was number 1. Kenny Willekes, who you were asking about out of Fenton, Michigan, was 5th on the team. 6 players in terms of tackling were 70 and above. So they tackled okay. Not as good as they usually do, but maybe better than Wisconsin opponents usually do. Last in tackling, Mike Panasiuk and Trey Person. Panasiuk gives effort, but you saw he got dinged up a little bit. Was it that game or the Ohio State game? Got a little dinged up. And you saw the pile move 3 or 4 times in that Wisconsin game. Panasiuk is the guy in the middle of that pile. He was not himself. Will he be back and ready for this game? Needs to be. They need him. He's an important part of the team. Just finishing out the point, in terms of pass rush, Jacob Panasiuk was number 1 at a 90. That was a healthy blue because he had that sack, caused a fumble. Nobody else in pass rush was above 70 against Wisconsin. The closest was Antoine Simmons at a 69.8. I think on a blitz he came in and batted a pass down. Dead last in pass rush, Drew Beasley, Noah Harvey, and Kenny Willekes, 3rd from last. So that tells you a little bit about the pass rush, and it's to your point. Beasley did a couple of good things, chasing down some plays in the Ohio State game. Not quite as good against Wisconsin. By the way, pass defense number 1 overall was David Dowell. Nobody else was above 70 in pass defense. We're going to wrap this up. Any more? Let's see. We got any more? Good question from Ronnie M671 from Grosse Ile, Michigan, which he says is the Maui of the Midwest. Grosse Ile is the Maui of the Midwest. All right, he says, in your opinion, who is the best recruiter on the staff? Who brings the least to recruiting? The least, maybe it's Jim Bowman. He's an older guy, doesn't get out like he used to. And even when he was a coordinator, you don't ask your coordinator to do quite as much when he's a co-coordinator in recruiting. Some programs don't. That being said, he's gotten out and gotten a few guys here and there, like Joe Bachie and a few. So he's not like, he does some work. They all do some work, but in terms of like elephant hunter lead guys, I don't know if they've got that guy. Terry Samuel could, should, and would be that guy. He's brought in a couple guys from Texas here and there. Detroit recruiting's been spotty. But you say that about Terry Samuel, and he goes out and he's the principal recruiter that landed Jordan Simmons. Did a good job from the beginning. Got him in for camp. Official visit. Finished the deal. There's still some room to go there because he's not signed yet, not till December. So I'm inclined to say Terry Samuel is not hitting what he should be doing on the staff. But then he goes and gets Simmons, the best commitment they've had in a few months. So I will say this, Brad Salem used to do a really good job, Chicagoland, and even getting on the other side of Lake Michigan here and there, and suburban Detroit. Now that he's coordinator, will he be doing less? He has more on his plate now, especially in the off season. So sometimes that happens. Your coordinator doesn't do as much. If Salem has to do less because he's coordinator, other people need to pick it up. Mark Staten, when he was recruiting coordinator, offensive line offensive line coach, he was a very busy and productive recruiter. Now that he's tight ends coach, is he still going to be as productive offensive line recruiting, helping Bowman in that area? I don't know the answer to that. But if Salem is down a little bit, and if Staten goes down a little bit, who's going to pick that up? I don't know the answer to that. Dave Warner's going to go get his, one or two out of Indiana and Georgia. He pulls his weight there a little bit for a coordinator. He's not a coordinator anymore. Long story short, some assistant coaches that have been parts of some very successful teams, but recruiting was spinning its wheels a little bit in the spring when all of that, the changeup was taking place with new coaches or coaching changes. The recruiting, I don't want to say assignments, but there was just a little bit of the wheels spun a little. There's a little bit of slippage there. They lost a little. What traction they had was the baton, the handoff was not ideal. So wheels. I mean, they need, if they can muster an 8-4, 9-3 finish, beat Michigan, go out and try to finish strong, hit the portal, maybe get some more after the first signing day. I'm not sure. But they could use some more wins to make up for what I think was lost time on the offensive side, recruiting-wise, in the spring. I think that's all the questions for football. Let me check basketball questions. All right. Question number 6 from Keith Dogger in Washington, D.C. Is Lawyer physically and mentally ready to play 12 minutes? We already went through that question, didn't we? There's a guy named Wet Fart out of East Lansing, Michigan. He says, how are the other big men on ball screen defense outside of Xavier Tillman? I was at practice today. They were working on ball screen defense. I was watching it. It's like Izzo says, there's not a ton of separation. Well, I mean, some guys are great at this and not as great at this. Marble, I didn't watch Marble, and I was watching the drill and I didn't notice him. I watched Malik Hall, power forward, and he moves well laterally. He'll be able to do it. Bingham, I watched him and I didn't gain an opinion on whether he's good or bad. I'm thinking the lateral movement, it's not going to be his thing. I mean, if he's guarding somebody, whoever he's guarding is going to come up and set a ball screen to force Bingham to play ball screen defense. Kithier is solid, you know that. Bingham and Marble are questions. And whoever does it best is going to have the best chance to play. Now, Bingham's, he's in the starting lineup right now. He's got some work to do. He needs to keep filling out, which he's not going to get much bigger in the near term, but it's a gradual rate of improvement for him. In the meantime, I mean, Marble might be able to offer some things. All right, so question number 8, Greg from Ypsilanti, with all the injuries in the backcourt, will they have to get minutes from Hoiberg or Connor George early against Kentucky? Could Bingham play the 3? No, Bingham cannot play the 3 because he can't guard a 3. Against Kentucky, Hoiberg, no. Connor George, possibly. If Arns can't play and there's foul trouble, possibly. He'll have to be ready to play. I don't think that would be in the initial game plan. But it's not a guy I wouldn't think that you would rely on a lot. But he's working, doing his best, can shoot okay and play some defense. But the more he plays, the less you have a chance. Nothing against him, but you're not going to be what you expect to be, I don't think. But bless his heart, he's good. And his mom's doing a great job with the volleyball team. Let's see. MSU analyst from Atlanta. What is your expectations for the minutes breakdown at the 4 and the 5 spots, assuming Hauser is not eligible at the beginning of the year? And then he says, how does that change if Hauser is eligible? All right, so you got 80 minutes at the 4 and the 5, right? Tillman's going to play about 30. Kithier's going to play about 20 if there's no Hauser. That's 50. That leaves 30 minutes remaining at the 4 and the 5. You got Hall, Marble, Bingham. 30 minutes. You could say easily 10, 10, 10. 10 minutes for Bingham and 20 for Kithier? Maybe not right away. But if Hauser's not eligible and you get to late December, I think that's a possibility. off at the beginning, Bingham's going to get 20. Kithier's probably going to get less and maybe earn more. Hall and Marble, 10-10. That could change. If Bingham doesn't do well, Marble might get more of Bingham's minutes. If they need more offense and Hall proves himself defensively, Hall could get more than 10. Great question. Izzo doesn't know yet. And those guys all have some ability, but a lot of them are unproven, obviously. But Hall, vertical athlete, bigger dude than I thought, moves well. He's into it. He's intense. Frankly, I heard that, that at some of the developmental levels that he might be a little bit soft and not as mentally strong. But I've not seen any signs of that. I didn't hear that from Michigan State people. I heard that from like the AAU circuit. But as somebody said in the Final Forum, if Purdue loved that kid, and they did, Malik Hall was a key linchpin in their recruiting efforts last year. Michigan State went in and beat Purdue for Malik Hall. If Purdue loved him, that tells you what kind of player he was. Obviously, if Michigan State loves him, that tells you something also. But Hall has not disappointed. And Marble has a good look. And Marble's got some skills, too, offensively, back to the basket. He's going to be a nice Izzo type of player. So the question is, how does it change if Hauser is eligible? Well, if Hauser's eligible, Hauser's going to play at least 22 minutes. Tillman's playing 30. Kithier, 10. What is that? 50, 62? So it leaves 18 minutes for Bingham, Marble, and Hall. 18 minutes. 6 and 6. 6 minutes for Bingham, 6 for Marble, 6 for Hall. That doesn't do anyone any good. One of those guys will probably play 10, and the other two 4 or something like that. And I think Bingham and Marble is a competition. Now Bingham can shoot. That's great, but they got other guys that can score. He can, you need your big man to be able to space out, but Tillman can do some of that. And if Hauser plays, Hauser can certainly do that. Bingham can shoot, but 95% of the game is played without the ball in your hands. Bingham needs to be strong at that 95%. I don't care if he can shoot well. Well, I do, but that needs to be icing on the top. Got to do the other stuff first, the glue stuff, especially at the 4. Speaking of shooting from the 4, I saw Goran Sutan today. I was going into the football building. He was walking out. We went back inside, sat down, had a few drinks, and all I kept talking about was glory days. Actually, we didn't go back in. He was going back to the parking lot. He was working on his ankle. He got injured a little bit. He's been playing for Madrid, which is a great gig, and he's trying to get that contract back together, he said. And he's trying to lay the foundation for what he wants to do after basketball and if he's going to retire. I'm thinking, retire? Jeez, he was just here. Well, he was here in 2009. He's been gone for 10 years. A 10-year pro career is not bad. And he's stuck pretty well in the European League. His parents moved to the Lansing area when he was like in 8th or 9th or 10th grade. And they lived in the Lansing area. I asked Sutan if his parents still lived in the Lansing area, and he said no, they live in Florida. He said he got his mom a place down in Florida, mom and dad. Mom had arthritis and wanted to get out of the cold. So Sutan's doing well enough to get his mom and dad a place in Florida, so that's cool. So I'm like, well, are you back in Madrid? Or are you hanging out in Florida? He said, no. He said he's been in East Lansing for about 3 months. So Sutan's just enjoying the off-season. This is the off-season for European basketball. Has had some meetings with Izzo about what he might want to do after he's done playing. But Sutan looked like he's in good shape, utilizing Michigan State for some physical therapy and so forth. He's liking life, so that's an update on Sutan. All right. Any other questions? I think that's it. Basketball, that's about it. Okay, let's go back to the YouTube questions. Got a few more questions here. We'll wrap it up. Corey Robinson handling a lot of questions. Appreciate that. I think that's it. All right, Desert Spartan. This will be the last one. Let's see. Now we got a few other ones. Corey Robinson doing a great job. All right, I'm just trying to find my place. Apologize. All right, Spartans Forever says, nice tweet by Billis just now in regards to Langford. Not surprised. Langford's a very popular person. Great kid. Brian V. from Flushing, Michigan. That's another orange and black. Says, do you think Brandon Wright sees some snaps on Saturday? Or do you expect Collins Williams to carry the load? I haven't thought about that yet. Let's see. I've got to go to my battery is running out a little bit. Um, he'll be ready to carry, but I suspect if they can get by just on Collins and Williams, they'll just get by on just Collins and Williams. But he will be activated and ready to play because they will need him. If someone gets tweaked, Brandon Wright will go into this game, full game plan, activated. You're playing. You know what I mean? Like you are no longer redshirting. You are playing. However, I don't think you play him in the second quarter. You play him if you get in the situation where the other guys aren't playing as well. Someone fumbles, someone tweaks something, then you go back, then you go in. There's 5 games left. If they can get through this game without playing him, then he's full go the last 4. He can play the last 4 and still redshirt and sit out the bowl game maybe. Get through this one, get through the Illinois game, then for sure you're full bore those 3 in the bowl game. So he's ready to play if needed. But as you've seen, Ladarius Jefferson might go through a whole game and only get 1 or 2 carries. So can you get through a whole game without your number 3 running back getting, do you really need 1 or 2 carries? Probably not. And D'Antonio has always said, we don't want to burn a red shirt on a kid just to give him 1 or 2 snaps. I mean, if a guy's going to burn his red shirt, D'Antonio wants the guy in more than, 8 or 10 snaps. So Brandon Wright is in there. He's like in that gray area between like the area where you need him, but also, do you really need him more than 5 snaps? That's a tough one. I'm sure they're talking about it in the war room. He'll be ready to play, helmet on, at all times, 5 seconds away from being told you're in. That's going to be Brandon Wright this weekend. Whether or not he gets that call, I don't know. Wouldn't surprise me to see him. But let's see, also Javez Alexander and Barnett, who gets more run going forward. Javez Alexander, I've not seen or heard or really, even in the green-white game, haven't seen much from him. Wide receiver from Ohio. Was he Sandusky, Ohio? Played some high school quarterback, was injured in high school, I think, a little bit. He debuts on the depth chart for the first time as a third stringer this week. First time we've seen him in the depth chart. He replaces Cam Chambers. And then Julian Barnett, who gets more run going forward. I think that's Julian Barnett. I think he gets more time. Alexander, does he get on the field? Not sure. But Barnett's ahead of Alexander. I've got no intel on Javez Alexander. I'm not. Don Treadwell, if he was available, he was available at media day, but he hasn't been available since then. They haven't done the midweek interviews this year. Maybe once they did. They used to have an assistant coach available every Wednesday, an offensive assistant and a defensive assistant. And they would preview the coming opponent. And after they preview the coming opponent, you might get a chance to ask them about second and third stringers and how guys are progressing from a player development standpoint. We've not been able to do that this year. This year, the coordinators have spoken a few times on Tuesdays. Did not do it today, come to think of it. Will they be available Wednesday? Maybe not. We're also seeing that at home games, coordinators are not doing post-game press conferences. They did after Western Michigan, but we were kind of told that's probably not going to happen very much anymore. Here's the deal. Now, they're not doing the Wednesdays. That means one of 2 things. Either they're just trying to cut back, or the assistant coaches don't feel, assistants coaches will do anything that D'Antonio tells them to. Maybe D'Antonio wants to cut it back. But when the assistant coaches did those Wednesday interviews, the coach was the guy who was assigned to do the main pregame prep for the coming opponent. So, if they're playing Central Michigan, Mark Staten would do it, because he was a MAC guy, that type of thing. Sometimes it seemed like they would give it to whichever coach might have some sort of extra interest in that game. Other games, it was the coordinator. Now this year, we've had the coordinators 3 times on Tuesday and nobody on Wednesday. It means one of 2 things. Either D'Antonio wants the coordinators to speak for each side and doesn't want the assistant coaches to do it, or the assistant coaches are no longer handling as the point man the preparation for the coming opponent. Now, they weren't doing all of it. The coordinators, of course, were doing what they normally do every single week anyway, but sometimes they would have equal assistance from an assistant coach. to go the extra mile that particular week and burn it out to help on that week's for that particular game. What I don't know is whether that part is out. If those assistants are no longer being the point man for a game prep. Either that's the case, which is interesting. Maybe the coordinators are handling it all this year. I don't know, which is interesting. Or they're still doing it, but they just don't want us talking to them. Maybe they don't want to talk. Maybe they're tired of it. I don't know. But there's a change there. They're not doing the Wednesdays. Not really got a reason why. But as far as I can see, those are the two reasons. Desert Spartan, any word on when Naylor is due back? Man, this is going longer than it should have. I apologize. No word on Naylor, but D'Antonio said that they do expect to have him back at some point this year, but I don't know when. Stu Redmond, MSU can afford to be physical Saturday too because there's another bye week afterwards. You're exactly right. They're going to load up. I don't know if Michigan State is going to be buttoned down and screwed in and a tight operation this weekend like they need to be, like they've been in past D'Antonio 10-win seasons. I don't know if they're going to be buttoned down and have all that crap together, but effort and physicality will be at their very best. I don't know what that's going to look like. It's not the most physically gifted Michigan State team, not the most physically dominating team, but whatever they have, they give their all every week. But after the Ohio State game, they only had so much to give against Wisconsin. You guys might think, man, they're 21 years old. They only played 12 games. Why can't they give their all? Well, sometimes your all one week is not as much as your all on another week because you're running out of all. If that makes any sense. Let's see, I think that's going to wrap it up. Yeah, I think that's it. We're done. Old Tug talking about Aldi Henry. I'm not going to go there. Anyway, appreciate everybody chiming in and all the questions here at the Mailbag podcast. Remember to invite all your friends and some of your enemies. Join us here. We will be back. We expect to be back next Monday. Getting back to the Monday schedule, 8:30 every week here at the SpartanMag.com YouTube channel. In the meantime, go check out SpartanMag.com. We need more members. We want to invite everybody. We are an inclusive community, internet community. Come on in, SpartanMag.com. Check us out over there. Got a lot more coverage to come with the days ahead. Michigan State getting ready to play Penn State, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Appreciate all the maggers. My name is Jim Comparoni, publisher of SpartanMag.com. Thanks for joining. We'll see you next week. Thanks a lot. Take care.